International Day of World Indigenous People. On this very auspicious occasion, I would like to share some of the issues and viewpoints on indigenous people, their knowledge and wisdom. Indigenous peoples are unarguably among the most disadvantaged, vulnerable groups of people in the world. The international community now recognizes that special measures are required to protect their rights and maintain their distinct cultures and ways of life. To raise awareness of the needs of these population groups, every 9th of August commemorates the International Day of the World Indigenous People, chosen in recognition of the first meeting of the United Nations Working Group on Indigenous Populations held in Geneva in 1982. And the theme of this year's celebration is COVID-19 and Indigenous Peoples' Resilience. The main aim is thus to highlight how the preservation and promotion of indigenous peoples' traditional knowledge and practices can be leveraged more fully during the pandemic. We all know that indigenous peoples are the holders of unique languages, knowledge systems and beliefs, and possess invaluable knowledge of practices for the sustainable management of natural resources. They hold their own diverse concept of development based on their traditional values, vision, needs, and priorities. In fact, indigenous peoples across the world play a unique and valuable role, suitably managing and safeguarding the fundamental part of their culture. Well, when we talk of the preservation and promotion of indigenous knowledge and practices of indigenous peoples, it naturally refers to both the tangible and intangible cultural heritage which stands out as the important sources of identity for them, which are related and needed to be conserved for future generations. On this auspicious occasion, let us have a nutshell information on how the indigenous populations themselves are aware of their traditional knowledge and how they try to preserve it by way of traditional custodianship strategy. For this, let us have some examples from Northeast India. This Northeast region have an area of 2,62,179 square kilometers and has a high concentration of indigenous population. Each population has their own distinct tradition of art, culture, dance, music, polity, and myriad traditional knowledge system of livelihood. Here, let us have one example of distinct tradition of craft of pot making among an indigenous Bali population of Manipur, and how they maintain a strong connection of the craft with their culture and environment. These practice, however, provide the basis for their economy and have endured for over thousands of years with cultural adaptation, with the ability to utilize resources often associated with or affected by seasonal variation and changing ecological conditions. The indigenous population called Andro is a pot-making group in the valley of Manipur who inhabit in the same named village. And among them, the craft of pot making is a part-time and women-oriented occupation. The people obtain their subsistence primarily through wet and dry cultivation, and in the household, men and women are involved in different activities. According to their gender-based division of labor, Andro males have primary responsibility for tilling the agricultural fields, and females are primarily responsible for possessing and processing of resources and household related activities besides other activities related to agriculture. So women excel in the craft of pot making on part-time basis in the dry season when they are free from their agricultural works. Different bezel types meant for different functional purposes are made by the people, thereby producing a number of pottery designs comprising those of cooking, drinking, liquid storage, dry storage, carrying vessels, and so on. The primary ceramic resources consist of clay and commingled with lacerang at a given proportion of 1:1.25 for the sole effect of achieving workability, counteracting ill effects of shrinkage and facilitating drying process of the finished product. Fashioning of the bezel is done with potter's naked hand with traditional technique of paddle and anvil. Now, in terms of traditional custodianship, two areas are very much significant related with the indigenous cultural management of pot making among the population. The first one is the monopoly of the craft confined to the women only, and another is the monopoly of the craft at the village level. So these two issues are related solely with the role expectation of the sexual division of labor as well as the resource procurement strategy. Traditional indigenous knowledge of the people in terms of pottery production is made for smooth functioning of the socio-economic activities in consonance with the cultural norms. Here, the issue of traditional custodianship comes up. We may take up two areas, that how the craft of pot making is categorically fit to both culture and environment. We can see that the cultural factors that pertain to the traditional custodianship led to the craft of pot making into a seasonal, part-time, and women-oriented craft. Let us have a quick look on these two issues. The first issue, as I mentioned, is related with the gender monopoly of the craft of pot making. It is seen that among the people, pot making is done by the women, the married women, laboring their unmarried counterparts in excelling the craft. And this restriction of the craft to the unmarried, unroped females is rather a cultural strategy, which may be perceived as a boundary maintaining mechanism of the tradition within the community, and that again subsequently led the craft a monopoly at the village level. Making of pottery among the Andhro is gender activity intimately connected with the female identity. The knowledge and the detail of the skill of which are male oriented. In fact, the art of pot making as a female oriented household craft owes to two main factors. First one is that the ritual restriction of ceramic resources exploitation, where the resource collection in a potting year is always regulated by culturally prescribed rituals duly performed by three ultimogenitural male issues of the three Andhro lineages. The second issue is related with the sexual scheduling of pot making in the light of the role expectation of the women in the society, providing negative feedback in growing pottery making into a women-oriented craft. Obviously, Andhro females tend to be closely attached to the household by their requirement of the cultural role expectation like infant care, pregnancy, and other household tasks like cooking, water fetching, spinning, or laundering. The activities pertaining to these role expectation widely rest on the gender-based division of labor, and they obviously have the advantage of accomplishing pot making in their homes as a part of household activities without affecting much of their other tasks. Another issue is the restriction of the craft to the unmarried, unroped females. Now, it can be perceived as a cultural strategy on the basis of a boundary maintaining mechanism of the tradition within the community. If the girls are taught to and excel in the craft, and if married outside the community after acquiring the knowledge of the art of pot making, then there are chances of spreading the craft to their non-Andhro husbands, family, and community. On the other hand, married females are allowed to join works of pottery making after 6 months of their marriage, when their respective husbands become a socially recognized working member of the society, and more particularly of his respective lineage. The husband gets this status in the society after a confirmatory ritual, and his wife naturally gets the prerogative to excel in the craft. Thus, the status of female potter obviously has linkages with the politico-legal status of their respective husbands, and hence, Andhro women's socio-economic status of being a potter has perennial relationship with the patriarchal framework of the society. Another important and interesting issue is with the monopoly of the craft at the village level as an indigenous strategy of traditional custodianship of the people. Village monopoly of the craft of pot making can be explained in two ways which gave part to the monopoly. In the first place, location of the two primary ceramic resources sites within the village boundary and people's rural power over the exploitation of the resources. The suitable resources of pot making are readily available to the people, as these are occurred within the village boundary. These two ceramic resources are at the legal disposal of the people, since they occur within the village, and the resources are made available categorically to the craft person by way of channelizing processes being enhanced by ritual. The ritual act have significant influences on the occupational idiom of the pot making, since these make the craft person refrain to collect the resources of their choices at any given time in a year. The strategy also allows observation of how the economic network relates to social network and political obligation. Hence, it functions as a negative feedback mechanism to make the craft a monopoly of the Andhro people. While the neighboring population of the Andhro village do not make ardent bezel owing to the lack of the favorable social condition as well as the resources, and thus the art of the craft remains as a prerogative of the Andhro in the area. The location of the resource site within the physical and social boundary of the Andhro may serve as one of the factors which may give away the inability of the neighboring communities and in the area to make pottery. Now, ritual restriction to the exploitation of ceramic resources is another important facet in the resource procurement strategy, which may be perceived as the devices at three different levels. That is, the maintenance of the craft to become a monopoly of the village, minimization of scheduling conflict between the period of pot making and season's agricultural activities, and serving as a boundary maintaining mechanism of regulating and preserving resources from chaotic, untidy exploitation. The rituals present institutionalization of stable supply of primary raw material and accumulation of the entities at the exploitation sites in order to enhance the survival of the craft. Here, it is seen that resource procurement activities are under the direct control of the three Andhro lineage heads, they call the PIBA, where they have the prerogative of patronizing the resource exploitative rituals. Clay and temper are not just picked up according to the potter's convenience of time and space, but are to be exploited duly with cultural categorization from two particular exploitation sites. Here, as a system of values, ideology is being advocated by way of legalizing exploitation of ceramic resources through ritual observations. Here, from this quick observation, we can see that the significant issue now is not with how and why they make earthen vessel, but on what are the cultural and environmental factors which favored or limited the subsequent development of the craft into monopoly of married females as well as of the Andhra village by way of people's traditional custodianship strategies. So the present example, Andhra example of pot making also reveals that gender can be viewed as an indispensable socio-economic category within the production milieu of Andhra ceramic, and also advocates a clear-cut gender division of labor in ceramic production that envisages an important area to deal with economy where one can see a shadow of patriarchal imprisonment. The Andhra system of attached production of pottery refers to the authority of the Andhra male lineage heads in directly controlling the resource sites from being free exploitation, that is, in penalizing the exploitation and procurement of ceramic resources. Thus, we can now see that the traditional mode of custodianship among the pot making population of the indigenous Andhra is one of the best examples how the indigenous people are guarding and protecting their cultural resources for sustainable and livelihood. Thank you all. Thank you very much.